The series begins by showing a beautiful and famous influencer named Bora. Right now, she's in the middle of an interview. But she also writes romance novels under the name Deborah, who is known for her expertise in the field of love. People even called her the goddess of love. Now there's this guy named Hund Sung-jin, who works at a book company. He's telling his co-worker, Lee Soo-yong, that they should team up with Bora, because her books are a hit, especially the last 3. The thing is, Soo-guk doesn't like her. He says she's a liar because her love stories don't match real life. He believes love isn't always perfect. Back to Bora, in her interview, she's talking about her own love life. She proudly says she's dating a rich and kind guy. But the reporter thinks she's showing off and takes a picture of her when she's not ready. Bora gets mad when she sees the photo at home, and her friend Lee Yu-chong gets curious about her interview, where she talked about love and marriage. 1 month earlier, Bora and her boyfriend, No Ju-hund, the CEO of a famous company, were at a fancy dinner event. People asked them about their marriage plans. Ju-won casually said they get married this year. Bora was shocked but happy to hear that her boyfriend wanted to marry her. Now, back to the present. Bora is talking to Yu-jung about Ju-won's plans. Suddenly, she gets a call from him, inviting her to dinner. Bora's all excited, thinking he's proposed to her officially. But when they meet up, Ju-won starts talking about stocks he bought. Bora thought they'd talk about their future. She tries to smile through it, but eventually she can't take it anymore and says she's not feeling well, so she leaves. Bora then meets up with Yu-jung at a cafe owned by Yu-jung's husband, Yoon Jin-woo. She lets out all her frustration about Ju-won. Jin-woo listens and they have a good laugh. He tells Bora retaliate against Ju-won. The next day, Bora was doing a live broadcast in a studio. She deliberately pointed out Ju-won's behavior, saying he didn't seem to take their relationship seriously. Meanwhile, Soo-duk was driving to work and happened to hear the radio broadcast. Miryo, the radio host, was reading a letter from a listener asking for advice on dealing with a boyfriend who's uninterested and always busy. Soo-duk felt a bit hurt because he realized he had been treating his girlfriend the same way. After hearing the listener's question, Bora suggested that it might be better for the writer to break up with a boyfriend who couldn't appreciate her. Once the radio show ended, Miryo wondered if there were guys who treated their girlfriends like the one described in the letter. One of the radio employees, Yuri, said it was quite likely to happen in the real world. Meanwhile, Soo-duk had been listening to the radio, and it finally hit him that he'd made a mistake. He decided to go to a bookstore to read Bora's books because her writing had touched him deeply. He quickly got in touch with his colleague Sang-jin and asked him to set up a meeting with Bora. On the other hand, Bora had finished her broadcast and headed to a mall to buy some jewelry. Around the same time, Soo-duk, who wanted to mend things with his girlfriend, also found himself in the same jewelry store. Strangely, Soo-duk had never seen Bora's real face on social media, so he didn't recognize the woman next to him. When the store attendant asked Soo-duk about the ring he wanted to buy, he said that all rings were the same and had no special meaning. Bora overheard this and teased him, saying that a ring meant something when given with a sincere heart. She also thought Soo-duk would probably get rejected by his girlfriend and return the ring in a few days. Annoyed, Soo-duk pretended he wanted to buy the same ring Bora was trying on, so the store attendant took it off her finger for him. Bora felt frustrated that she couldn't get that limited edition ring and decided to leave the jewelry store. As she was leaving, she got a call from Yu-jung, who told her that she had seen Ju-won buying a pair of rings and suspected he might be planning to propose to Bora. This news made Bora happy. On her way home, she happened to see Soo-hyuk waiting for his girlfriend at a cafe. Still upset with him, she couldn't resist taunting him as she walked by, which only fueled Soo-duk's dislike for her even more. Not too long after that, Yuri, who was Soo-duk's girlfriend, showed up at the cafe. But when he tried to patch things up, she decided to break up with him and told Soo-duk not to see her anymore. She mentioned she was planning to marry someone else who truly appreciated and loved her, unlike Soo-duk, who had never paid much attention to her. It hit Soo-duk that Yuri was the one who wrote the radio letter earlier. Yuri, with tears in her eyes, confessed that she had never felt loved throughout their relationship. She left the cafe, hailed a taxi, and went home, despite Soo-duk's attempts to stop her. He was left feeling sad and regretful for being so indifferent to Yuri in the past. Heartbroken, Soo-duk took Sang-jin to a bar and poured out his feelings about Yuri. Sang-jin was confused by the news of Yuri breaking up with Soo-duk, especially since his friend had even prepared a ring for her. He thought that if Soo-duk had given her the ring earlier, maybe Yuri wouldn't have decided to end their relationship. In that moment, Soo-duk, still feeling down, unexpectedly blamed Bora for the failure of his relationship and asked Sang-jin to cancel his meeting with her. Sang-jin couldn't do that because he had already set up the meeting with Bora. Frustrated, Soo-duk chose to leave Sang-jin at the bar. The next morning, Bora had just woken up when she got a call from Ju-won, asking to meet up after her radio show. She was all smiles, thinking maybe he'd surprise her with a marriage proposal. Meanwhile, Sang-jin was already at work, venting his frustration to Soo-duk for getting drunk and acting crazy the night before. It had been embarrassing for Sang-jin to take care of him. But Soo-duk, feeling heartbroken, didn't pay much attention because he believed his relationship was falling apart because of his mistakes. He appeared gloomy all day and even shooed away a couple sitting in front of his office. In the radio studio, the cheerful Bora once again gave relationship advice to her listeners. She advised against giving second chances to cheaters, as she found infidelity to be a shameful act. Her listeners appreciated her views and theories. After her broadcast, Ju-won was waiting for her outside the studio. Bora felt a bit nervous and thought maybe he was planning a surprise marriage proposal, but it turned out to be his stuff in the car trunk that needed attention. Later, they arrived at a movie theater, and Bora wondered if he might propose, especially since he had rented a private cinema room for just the two of them. Unfortunately, her hopes were dashed when she saw Ju-won falling asleep during the movie. As they drove back home, Bora thought he might finally propose when he stopped her from getting out of the car, but he just wanted her to throw away his drink cup, leaving her feeling let down. As a group of young men entered a nightclub, they were clearly enjoying the music DJ was playing. One of them, Young Jin-ho, happened to spot Bora's younger sister, Yeon Bo-mi, on the dance floor with her friends. Struck by Bo-mi's beauty, Jin-ho decided to approach her when she was alone. Nervously, he tried to introduce himself, but the loud music in the bar made it hard for Bo-mi to hear him. While she was with her friends, Bo-mi suddenly didn't feel well and wanted to go home. She bumped into Sung-yog in the bar hallway, someone she didn't know. At first, Bo-mi hesitated, but after some convincing, Bo-mi agreed to go home with him. However, to her surprise, Sung-yog took her to a hotel instead, which made Bo-mi angry, realizing his intentions weren't good. She promptly got out of the car and walked away from the hotel, but he got angry and shouted at her. Luckily, Jin-ho happened to pass by and came to Bo-mi's rescue. He took her on a bus, even though Bo-mi remained indifferent to him. Jin-ho was just happy to sit beside her. On another day, Soo-duk still refused to work with Bora, despite Sang-jin's persistent pressure, saying that Bora was on her way to their publishing office. At the same time, Bora, accompanied by her friend Yoo-jung, was heading towards the publishing office. They were chatting about her date from the previous night. Yoo-jung laughed at Bora, who was disappointed that Ju-won still hadn't proposed. She then told Bora about the publishing company owned by Sang-jin, known for having a smart and kind-hearted vice CEO named Soo-duk. As Bora and Yoo-jung arrived in front of the meeting room, they accidentally overheard an argument between Sang-jin and Soo-duk. In the midst of their dispute, both of them were saying unkind things about Bora, and the vice CEO even claimed that all of her books were filled with lies. Bora was understandably angry about Soo-duk's words, so she walked right into the room, realizing that he was the same guy she had encountered at the jewelry store. Likewise, Soo-duk just realized that Bora was the woman who had teased him earlier. They both got into a heated argument, with Soo-duk blaming Bora for the problems in his relationship with Yuri. He thought Bora couldn't attract the opposite sex and had never experienced love herself, yet she confidently gave love advice. Bora accused Soo-duk of wanting her to seduce him and challenged her to prove her title as the goddess of love by melting his heart. Bora accepted the challenge, and seeing things getting intense, Sang-jin quickly suggested they all go for a drink together. During the journey, Sang-jin didn't expect Bora to accept the challenge and sign a cooperation contract with his company, so he warned Soo-duk not to cause any issues with her. At the cafe, Sang-jin asked Bora and Soo-duk to exchange phone numbers and discussed some contract details. After dinner, they headed to a karaoke place where Bora sang a song to tease Soo-duk, while the vice CEO chose a heartbreak song. Bora thought Soo-duk was quite predictable, but according to Yoo-jung, Soo-duk was actually a cool and popular guy. A little while later, Bora and Soo-duk parted ways with Sang-jin and Yoo-jung and waited for a taxi at the same spot. Bora, curious about the ring Soo-hyuk had bought for his girlfriend earlier, suspected that he had been turned down. But Soo-hyuk simply mentioned he hadn't given the ring to his girlfriend yet. Bora chuckled and teased him before hopping into a taxi that arrived. Not long after, Soo-hyuk checked his phone and realized it had been swapped with Bora's phone. He quickly hailed a taxi to catch up with her. In the taxi, Bora noticed her phone was missing and called her number, surprising Soo-hyuk, who hid behind a car to avoid being seen. Bora inquired about Soo-hyuk's whereabouts because she wanted to return her phone, but Soo-hyuk refused and claimed to be out of town, unaware that Bora could hear his voice and had spotted him hiding. Caught in the act, Soo-hyuk tried to hide his embarrassment and promptly returned Bora's phone while apologizing for witnessing the situation between her and her boyfriend. Bora didn't seem eager to discuss it and decided to leave him. The next morning, Bora woke up feeling disappointed because she hadn't received a message from Ju-won, who had made a mistake the previous night. Meanwhile, at his office, Sang-jin was meeting with a girl named Ban Yuri, who had come for a job interview. Sang-jin was initially surprised by Yuri's visit because he didn't think they were hiring new employees. However, Yuri got a phone call about a mix-up with the company she had applied to, and she hurriedly said goodbye. Sang-jin stopped her and offered her a job after seeing her strong work ethic. Yuri was thrilled to accept the offer, and after the interview, Sang-jin introduced her to all the employees in his office. Back to Bora, who was having breakfast with Bo-mi, she seemed uninterested, making Bo-mi think that her older sister might be having a fight with Ju-won. When Bora noticed her sister holding a phone, Bora immediately took it, suspecting that Bo-mi might be in touch with Ju-won, even though Bo-mi was actually checking message notifications from Jin-ho. Bo-mi got upset when Bo-rae opened the message. On the other hand, Jin-ho felt really happy that Bo-mi had finally read his message, even though she didn't respond. Later that evening, Yoo-jung, who was listening to Bora's story, was shocked to hear about Ju-won's affair. She invited Bora to have drinks at her husband's cafe. Surprisingly, Ju-won was also at the same cafe, talking about his problems with Jin-woo. When Bora and Yoo-jung noticed Ju-won's car parked in the cafe's courtyard, they realized he was inside and secretly eavesdropped on the conversation between Ju-won and Jin-woo. Jin-woo didn't expect Ju-won to be involved in an affair, but Ju-won admitted to it, saying he felt pressured. He also confessed that he had never truly loved Bora, and when she caught him with another woman, he felt relieved to have an excuse to break free. Bora, quietly listening to all these confessions, felt increasingly hurt and left the cafe quickly. Back at home, Bora was lost in thoughts about her romantic relationship when she got a message from Ju-won, saying he was waiting outside. She hurriedly freshened up to hide her puffy eyes from crying and left without saying a word to him. In silence, Ju-won followed her until they reached a small shop. After a long silence, Ju-won finally apologized to Bora, who asked if he had only met her to say sorry. He didn't say much except to apologize again. Bora, feeling frustrated, stormed out of the shop with Ju-won trailing behind. They were so caught up in their argument that they didn't notice the garbage truck passing by and the sanitation workers starting to collect trash on the street. Bora grew increasingly emotional, even calling Ju-won garbage and asking the sanitation workers to pick him up. Ju-won, who was a bit tipsy, climbed onto the garbage truck as she instructed, shouting that she was also garbage like him. So she climbed onto the garbage truck too. Two sanitation workers tried to intervene and asked them both to get down. The next morning, Bora, just waking up, received a call from Yoo-jung, reminding her about being the main guest at her company magazine's party later that night. Meanwhile, at the publishing office, Sang-jin and Soo-hyuk were discussing Bora, who hadn't signed the contract yet and couldn't be reached, despite previously agreeing to work with them. Soo-hyuk, aware of Bora's heartbreak, asked Sang-jin to be patient and wait for news from her. Sang-jin was surprised by his colleague suddenly defending the love goddess he used to dislike. Shortly after, they received an invitation from Yoo-jung to her company's party. That evening, Sang-jin and Soo-hyuk attended Yoo-jung's invitation. While chatting, Sang-jin was taken aback when he spotted So Soo-jin, his ex-wife, and the head of the magazine company hosting the party. Sang-jin felt awkward and tried to make small talk with her, but his ex-wife didn't welcome her ex-husband's presence at her party and chose to mingle with other guests. A bit later, just before her performance on stage, Bora was seen sipping wine to boost her confidence. Unfortunately, she drank too much and started rambling, saying that all men were no good. The party got even crazier when she raised her middle finger in front of all the guests and then stumbled and fell on stage. Soo-duk, who witnessed this, quickly covered Bo-ra with his jacket and carried her away from the stage. He put her down behind the party venue and gave her his jacket to cover herself before leaving her there. The next day, a video of Bo-ra causing a scene at the party had gone viral on social media. All the employees at the publishing office watched the video, and they thought Soo-duk's actions of taking Bo-ra off the stage were really cool, making him feel embarrassed by all the attention at the office. Meanwhile, Bo-ra's social media was flooded with hateful comments from netizens, and she regretted her mistake. Shortly after, Yoo-jung suggested that Bo-ra write an open letter of apology. Although it wouldn't completely clear her name, it might reduce the online hate. Bo-ra then wrote an apology letter and posted it on social media, explaining the reason for her embarrassing actions after being cheated on by her boyfriend. She felt ashamed because, as the love goddess who was supposed to know everything about love, she was experiencing a tragic love story. Unfortunately, Bo-ra's apology didn't entirely stop the hatred from her haters, so she decided to disable the comments section on her social media. That night, in front of a convenience store, Sang-jin, who accidentally saw Soo-duk browsing Yuri's social media, teased his colleague for not being able to forget his ex-girlfriend. According to Sang-jin, Soo-duk was late in apologizing to Yuri, and he showed evidence that she had a new boyfriend in her profile picture, with a man's arm around her. Yuri's social media status also indicated that she had found certainty. However, when Sang-jin showed this to Soo-duk, he accidentally pressed the call button, causing panic and making excuses, claiming he had dialed the wrong number because he had many contacts with Yuri's name. After Sang-jin ended the call, Soo-duk was surprised to hear a man's voice on the call, so he hurried to his ex-girlfriend's house and saw her with her new boyfriend. Soo-duk hadn't expected her to find a replacement for him so quickly. On another day, Bo-ra decided to get some fresh air by taking the bus and meeting her fans. Meanwhile, as Soo-duk was on his way to the office, he happened to hear a song on the radio that reminded him of Yuri. When he stopped at a red light, his car ended up next to the bus that Bo-ra was on, and he noticed that she was crying. Soo-duk found it odd that she would cry in public, considering she was a celebrity. On the other hand, Yoo-jung's magazine company had published a magazine featuring the girl group Blackpink on the cover, which was distributed to all magazine outlets. Bo-ra received a copy of the magazine and was surprised to see the news about herself. This reminded her of the jacket that Soo-duk had borrowed from her earlier. Back at the office, Sang-jin read an article about Bo-ra in the magazine and felt that public perception of her was starting to improve as many people were forgiving her for her mistakes. That's why he planned to recruit Bo-ra again. But Soo-duk opposed the idea and wondered how Bo-ra would view their company, which hadn't helped her when she was in distress. At the same time, Bo-ra was heading to Sang-jin's office to return Soo-duk's jacket and bring him a cake. When she reached Sang-jin's office, she accidentally overheard a conversation between Sang-jin and Soo-duk discussing her, with Soo-duk once again pointing out her flaws. Angry, she decided to leave the jacket and cake with Yuri before leaving the publishing office. After Yuri gave Soo-duk the jacket and cake, he was surprised to learn that Bo-ra had visited and immediately went after her, because he knew she had overheard their conversation with Sang-jin. Unfortunately, he lost track of her. Sang-jin then asked Soo-duk to call and persuade Bo-ra to sign the contract, but Soo-duk refused, saying he would meet her only to apologize for the misunderstanding. After Soo-duk asked Bo-ra to meet at a cafe, he apologized for what she had overheard at the publishing office. Bo-ra shrugged it off, saying she was used to criticism from many people. She also asked Sang-jin's publishing company to cancel their contract, explaining that she couldn't bring herself to write another love book. Soo-duk agreed to her request and went to order drinks for them. While waiting, she noticed Ju-won entering the cafe, and they exchanged glances. When Soo-duk returned, Bo-ra, aware that Ju-won was sitting nearby, asked if her ex-boyfriend was looking at her. Soo-duk confirmed it, and Bo-ra playfully suggested that he smile to make Ju-won jealous. Soo-duk reluctantly obliged. They continued to display affection for each other even after leaving the cafe, deliberately making Ju-won jealous before going to a fried chicken restaurant. During their time together, Bo-ra wondered why Soo-duk had suddenly started being kind to her, given that he seemed to dislike her before. Soo-duk explained that he had also recently experienced heartbreak after Yuri broke up with him and shared the events he had gone through. Bo-ra was surprised by this revelation and Soo-duk admitted that heartbreak couldn't be cured but would eventually heal on its own. After they finished their meal, Soo-duk, who was driving Bora home, believed that Bora had the experience to write a breakup book. However, she insisted that she wouldn't write another book because she thought no one would read it after all the mess she had caused. Soo-duk tried to persuade her, but she remained adamant about not wanting to write. She even suggested that they should act as if they didn't know each other if they ever ran into each other by chance. The next day, Soo-duk told Sang-jin about Bora refusing to write again, which frustrated Sang-jin. Meanwhile, Bo-mai, who was peeking into her sister's room, received another message from Jin-ho, reminding her to eat. This annoyed Bo-mai, and she replied with a threat to block his number if he continued sending messages. Despite the rejection, Jin-ho was still happy because Bo-mai finally replied to his message. On another occasion, he had a job interview at Jin-woo's cafe to work as a cafe attendant. Jin-woo, initially hesitant to hire Jin-ho as he had no cafe work experience, eventually accepted him because he saw many similarities between them. Jin-ho was pleased to work at a cafe close to Bo-mai's home. As for Bora, who wasn't feeling well, she seemed to prefer drinking a bottle of wine over resting. That night, Soo-duk stood by the Han River with the intention of discarding the ring he had meant to give to Uri. But he couldn't bring himself to do it, and chose to go home instead. On his way back, he accidentally saw Ju-won and his mistress walking happily together. After Soo-duk got into his car, Bora suddenly called him to ask about Ju-won's expression when he looked at her in the cafe. He, thinking that Bora might be drunk, said that Ju-won didn't seem regretful, even though they had broken up. Hearing this, Bora started crying again and went to Ju-won's house in a disheveled state. Ju-won, who had just returned and saw Bora outside his house, became angry with her, especially after she said she couldn't live without him. At that moment, Ju-won said that Bora looked cheap by begging for love, and she slapped him. Ju-won quickly went inside the house, while Bora sat on the side of the road, crying and lamenting her fate. Soo-duk suddenly approached her and hugged her. He then took the still-crying Bora into his car and asked her to act the way she had written in her book. Instead of comforting her, Bora became even sadder upon hearing Soo-hyuk scolding her. He then drove her home and told her to get some rest and visit the doctor for a checkup before she got out of the car. The next day, Bora went to the doctor, and after the examination the doctor told her that she had a minor stomach irritation. Bora was relieved but was advised not to drink alcohol for a while. She shared the results with Soo-duk and thanked him for his help. She also told him not to get sick and expressed a hope that they wouldn't meet again. Some time later, Bora had healed from her heartbreak, so she decided to gather all the memory from her time with Ju-won to throw them away. She asked her sister, Bo-mai, to dispose of them, but her younger sister had a different idea for the items to avoid throwing them away in vain. At the jewelry store, Soo-duk returned the ring he had bought for Uri. The store clerk laughed at him and confirmed Bora's earlier suspicion that he would come back to return the ring. The store clerk explained that all purchased items couldn't be returned, so he took the ring back. Back to Bora, she had a meeting with a potential buyer for her apartment, as she planned to sell it and make a fresh start. Along with a real estate agent, she also checked out a new apartment unit she wanted to buy. However, she got confused because she didn't have enough money for the deposit, even though she had the funds from selling her old apartment. While checking her email, she finally found a message from Sang-jin offering her a collaboration contract, so she decided to visit his publishing company. On another occasion, Bora found herself in front of Sang-jin's publishing office. She hesitated to go in, remembering her earlier words to Soo-duk about not wanting to meet again. After some internal debate, she mustered the courage to enter and discuss the job offer with Sang-jin and Soo-hyuk. Sang-jin explained that the contract couldn't be finalized immediately due to ongoing projects at his company. Bora then suggested the idea of writing a book about her failed love story, thinking it might be well received. Sang-jin found the idea interesting and left the decision on the contract to Soo-duk, the company planner. Soo-duk expressed concerns about Bora having to write about her personal life, but she reassured him that she didn't mind, and they ultimately agreed to sign the contract. That night, Bora, now officially a writer at Sang-jin's publishing company, joined the staff for dinner at a restaurant. During the meal, Soo-duk advised her not to drink alcohol due to her health issues, but she ignored him and continued drinking until she got drunk. After the dinner event, Sang-jin asked Soo-duk to take Bora home. Despite Soo-duk's initial refusal, He ended up accompanying her on the bus. Bora kept babbling, which prompted a man sitting next to her to move away. Soo-duk sat beside the sleeping Bora, but she woke up needing to use the restroom. They got off at the nearest bus stop, and since they couldn't find a public toilet, she decided to urinate in a secluded spot. Soo-duk, waiting from a distance, simply smiled at Bora's comical behavior until he was surprised by the flowing urine from Bora. The next morning, Bora woke up, recalling all the embarrassing incidents from the previous night. She felt ashamed and angry at herself for acting foolishly. When she shared the story with Yoo-jung at Jinwoo's cafe, her friend burst into laughter at Bora's funny story. Just then, Bora's phone rang, and it was Soo-duk calling. However, still embarrassed about the previous night, she intentionally didn't answer the call. Bora continued recounting her story to Yoo-jung, mentioning that she had moved on from Joo-won, who had left her. Later, Jin-ho, who was working at the cafe, approached Bora for relationship advice. She initially declined because he had asked for advice multiple times in the past, but he insisted, so she reluctantly agreed. Jin-ho then talked about his feelings for Bo-mi and how she threatened to block him if he messaged her again. Bora advised him to stop messaging her and believed that if she was meant to be his destiny, they would meet again. On another day, Bora moved into her new apartment, feeling nostalgic about leaving her old one filled with memories. She began organizing her belongings in the new place. Meanwhile, Bo-mi received a message from a potential buyer for a jacket that Bo-mi had sold online without her knowing. After arranging the meeting, Bo-mi hurried to a bus stop where the jacket buyer, Jin-ho, was waiting. She didn't expect him to be the buyer, and despite her annoyance, Jin-ho appeared happy to meet her. He believed she was his destiny, but Bo-mi confessed that she already had a boyfriend. Jin-ho thought she was lying and decided to follow her after paying for the jacket. Undeterred, he asked her to be his girlfriend the next time they met. Back at the publishing office, Soo-duk was getting increasingly frustrated with Bora, who kept avoiding meeting him to discuss her book project. In an effort to push things forward, he insisted on holding a virtual meeting, which made Bora anxious about her lies being uncovered. When the meeting finally began, she pretended to be sick and even wore a neck brace to make it look convincing that she was unwell. However, her plan took an unexpected turn when Yoo-jung and Bo-mi arrived, disrupting Bora's scheme to fake illness. They greeted Soo-duk and invited him to Bora's upcoming housewarming party. An irritated Bora had to escort both of them out, and as they left, Yoo-jung adjusted the neck brace Bora was wearing, leaving Bora with a wry smile as her lies was exposed. After the meeting, Bora was annoyed with Yoo-jung for inviting Soo-duk to her housewarming party. As they prepared food for the gathering, Jinwoo and Jin-ho arrived to help Bora set up her new home. Yoo-jung introduced Bo-mi to Jin-ho, and they both seemed surprised by the meeting. Yoo-jung, noticing their expressions, began to suspect that there was more to their connection. That evening, just before the party was about to start, Bora received a pleasant surprise when Soo-duk showed up at her house, bringing a gift along. Soo-duk introduced himself to Jin-ho and Jinwoo, and joined them for dinner. When Bora noticed the jacket Jin-ho was wearing, it seemed oddly familiar, but she couldn't quite place it. Bo-mi, her younger sister, felt a pang of anxiety, worried that her sister might discover she hadn't actually gotten rid of all the items from Bora's ex-boyfriend, and had instead sold them online. Luckily for Bo-mi, Bora didn't make the connection that Jin-ho was wearing her jacket, which relieved her. As the conversation continued, Bora became curious about the girl Jin-ho had a crush on. He admitted he had met her again, but was still being ignored. Bora and Yoo-jung suddenly started giving him advice, even going so far as to criticize the girl he liked. Bo-mi, feeling like they were talking about her, grew irritated. Jin-ho, noticing Bo-mi's expression, tried to explain that the girl he liked was beautiful and kind-hearted, which left Bo-mi feeling embarrassed. In a playful manner, she even asked Soo-duk who he thought was more beautiful between her and Bora. Soo-duk, wanting to tease Bora, playfully chose Bo-mi, knowing it would make Bora angry. After dinner, as Jin-ho was leaving, he took a moment to help Bo-mi dispose of the trash and asked if she had a boyfriend. She replied that she didn't, which seemed to make him happy, and he mentioned that he would contact her. Bora then walked Soo-duk to the front door to thank him for the gift before he left. Later in her room, Bora rested and looked at the reading lamp Soo-duk had given her. She felt happiness welling up within her as new experiences and people began to fill the void in her life. On another occasion, Bora met Soo-duk at a cafe to discuss her plans for writing the book they had talked about during the contract signing. She admitted she was currently searching for the right inspiration to begin writing. After the work discussion concluded, Soo-hyuk playfully reminded Bo-ra about her intention to make him fall for her. In response, she gave him a seductive look. Soo-hyuk, feeling a bit awkward, tried to cover it up by laughing and insisting her efforts were in vain. Bo-ra calmly explained that her seductive charm would work its magic when he was about to sleep. Surprisingly, her words turned out to be true, as Soo-hyuk, who was trying to sleep that night, found himself unable to stop thinking about her. The next day at the office, Sang-jin was taken aback by Soo-hyuk's lack of enthusiasm, all because he hadn't slept well due to his thoughts of Bo-ra. Meanwhile, back at home, Bo-mae was looking at a photo of Jin-ho from her sister's housewarming celebration. She received a message from Jin-ho, inviting her to have a meal together, and without much hesitation she accepted. Jin-ho, eager to make a good impression on their first date, sought advice once again from Bo-ra and Yoo-jung, who were at a cafe. His intention was to confess his love for Bo-mae. The two women suggested that Jin-ho should express his feelings to her in public. According to Yoo-jung and Bo-ra, most girls prefer it when a guy declares his love in front of everyone. On another day, Soo-hyuk met Bo-ra at a cafe to provide her with a draft of her book's writing. She thought he was a great book editor and could be a big help, especially since she was struggling to finish her book. Bo-ra also shared her plan to create an ending in which the female lead wears a black dress to meet her ex and show him that she's happy without him, making him regret leaving her. To make her book more authentic, Bo-ra wanted to actually bring that final scene to life. So she and Soo-hyuk went to a mall to buy a black dress for her to wear when she meets Joo-won. After trying on several dresses, Soo-hyuk, who was also evaluating the dress, was captivated by Bo-ra, who looked stunning in a short black dress with small polka dot patterns. She also asked him to accompany her when she meets Joo-won, and after some insistence, he finally agreed. On the other hand, Jin-ho and Bo-mae were strolling together, watching street performers. Unexpectedly, Jin-ho started singing while holding a bouquet of flowers and asked her to be his girlfriend. The crowd cheered and Bo-mae, feeling embarrassed, initially walked away from the crowd. However, she'd eventually returned and hugged him, suggesting they talk in private. Bo-mae expressed her frustration to Jin-ho for embarrassing her in public, but after seeing his sincerity, she accepted him as her boyfriend, making Jin-ho happy as they held hands. Moving on to Bo-ra, who met Joo-won at a cafe. She greeted him and calmly told him that she had accepted their breakup. She expressed her regret that Joo-won had chosen to cheat on her instead of being honest about not having feelings for her anymore. She mentioned that if he had been truthful about wanting to break up, she would have understood. Joo-won, feeling guilty, could only apologize, while Bo-ra reiterated that she had allowed him to continue with his affair and wanted to maintain a good relationship despite no longer being a couple. After saying her word, Bo-ra left the cafe with Soo-hyuk, leaving Joo-won surprised to see her with another man. Bo-ra then thanked Soo-hyuk for being there during her conversation with Joo-won, and they decided to go to a karaoke place to lighten the emotional atmosphere. While Bo-ra sang a heartbreak song, reminiscing about her time with Joo-won, Soo-hyuk suggested she sing a happier tune, and she expressed gratitude for his support during this difficult period after her breakup with Joo-won. Soo-hyuk also shared his appreciation, feeling that his time had become more enjoyable since meeting Bo-ra. They both felt a bit awkward and decided to head home, but just as Bo-ra was about to leave, Soo-hyuk suddenly pulled her back and kissed her. Bo-ra seemed to giving him permission for the kiss and pursue a romantic relationship. Back in their respective homes, they both reflected on the kiss. Even the next day, Bo-ra, sitting at the cafe, couldn't stop thinking about the previous night's events. She wondered if she had initiated the kiss, or if Soo-hyuk had touched her shoulder first. She tried to convince herself that she had turned first to kiss him and felt embarrassed. When she spotted Soo-hyuk approaching the cafe, she hurried to the restroom, feeling self-conscious. After Soo-hyuk entered the cafe, he was greeted by Yoo-jung, who informed him that Bo-ra was still embarrassed to meet him due to what had happened the night before, as Bo-ra had confided in her about the incident. Soo-hyuk wondered why Bo-ra had shared their kiss with someone else, while Yoo-jung asked him to act as if nothing had happened when facing Bo-ra. Shortly after, Bo-ra finally met up with Soo-hyuk and began discussing the previous night's kiss, treating it as something that happens to many people. Soo-hyuk laughed it off and suggested they stop talking about it, emphasizing that it was just a mistake and they should continue with a normal friendship. He also made it clear that he had no romantic feelings for Bora. They both planned to go to the publishing office together. While in the car, Soo-hyuk noticed Bora struggling with her seatbelt and offered to help, but she misinterpreted his intentions, thinking he was going to kiss her again. This misunderstanding frustrated Soo-hyuk to the point where he opened the car door and told her to get out. The following day, Bora had a facial treatment and accompanied Soo-hyuk to the gym. He playfully teased her by claiming to have an athletic body that could captivate her. Wearing a cap and a face mask after her facial, Bora scolded Soo-hyuk for his remarks, feeling he had crossed a line by asking her to think about his body. Unbeknownst to her, while watching Soo-hyuk work out, Bora began to daydream about his athletic physique. But her daydream was interrupted when Yoo-jung arrived at the gym, expressing suspicion about Bora and Soo-hyuk's close relationship. Bora denied having any romantic involvement with Soo-hyuk and even spoke ill of him, not realizing that Soo-hyuk had heard all her insults. Upon seeing Soo-hyuk leave with a hurt expression, Bora quickly chased after him, apologizing. However, he remained angry and didn't respond to her. On another occasion at a cafe, Bora and Yoo-jung were surprised to find Soo-jin already there, while Soo-hyuk met Sang-jin, who appeared frustrated at a nearby shop. Bora and Yoo-jung listened to Soo-jin's sad story, as it was her wedding anniversary and also the day of her divorce. Bora, who had previously disrupted Soo-jin's company party, seemed to be trying to make amends and get closer to Yoo-jung's boss. Shortly after, Soo-jin invited them to go to a bar and forget their worries. At the same time, Bo-mai sent a message to Jin-ho, who was still working, saying that she was in front of the cafe. Panicked, Jin-ho tried to inform her about her sister who was inside. Unfortunately, Bora had already left and spotted Bo-mai standing in front of the cafe. Bora and Yoo-jung invited Bo-mai to join them. At the bar, the four of them were having a good time, and surprisingly, Soo-hyuk and Sang-jin were there too. Sang-jin told Soo-hyuk that he would go downstairs to bring a hostess. As he approached a woman from behind, Sang-jin was shocked to find out that the woman he was flirting with was Bora. Feeling embarrassed, Sang-jin invited Bora to join them for drinks on the upper floor. When Bora arrived upstairs with the others in the room Sang-jin had reserved, she didn't expect to see Soo-hyuk there as well. Bora took Soo-hyuk aside to express her disappointment with him for saying he was busy with office work, but ending up at the bar. She also apologized to him for her earlier comments that had offended him, and made it clear that she didn't want their relationship to become more serious. Soo-hyuk didn't immediately respond and Bora continued, expressing her concern that he might not want to see her again. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, Soo-hyuk forgave her, making Bora very happy. Meanwhile, Jin-ho and Jin-woo arrived at the bar after getting information from Bo-mai. When Jin-woo saw Yoo-jung being friendly with Sang-jin, he became angry and accused his wife of cheating, almost getting into a fight with Sang-jin. Fortunately, Bora managed to calm Jin-woo down and explained that Sang-jin was her co-worker. Ashamed of his unfounded accusation, Jin-woo left immediately and Yoo-jung followed him. In the car, Jin-woo, worried that his wife might be interested in another man, suggested that they sleep together as Yoo-jung had wanted. Yoo-jung declined his offer because he had acted as a self-appointed judge, but deep down, she was pleased with her husband's attitude. Meanwhile, Sang-jin escorted Soo-jin home in a taxi, and Jin-ho was with Bo-mai before they all decided to leave the bar. On the other hand, as Bora returned home with Soo-hyuk, they discussed who had kissed him first. Soo-hyuk playfully claimed he had initiated the kiss, which made Bora smile. He apologized for kissing her and admitted that he used to dislike her. But his feelings had changed, and he hoped they wouldn't argue anymore. When they arrived at Bora's house, Soo-hyuk complimented her, saying she looked more beautiful, which made her feel a bit shy. Before going to bed, Bora couldn't stop thinking about the compliments Soo-hyuk had given her, so she sent him a message to thank him. However, Soo-hyuk read the message but didn't respond as he was preoccupied with the memory from his past relationship with Uri. He collected those items and planned to throw them away. Meanwhile, Bora felt annoyed that he didn't reply and even searched online to find out why men don't respond to women's messages. She stumbled upon her own article, which advised ignoring the message until the man offers an explanation. Frustrated that her own advice didn't make her feel better, she received a message from Ju-won asking about her well-being but chose to ignore it. The next day, Soo-hyuk had a change of heart about discarding his memory with Yuri and decided to keep them, placing them in his car. At the cafe, Bora confided in Yoo-jung about not receiving a reply from Soo-guk. As they talked, Jinwoo walked past them, looking downcast. Yoo-jung shared that she had turned down Jinwoo's proposal to sleep together the previous night. She also mentioned that Jinwoo had run into Joo-won, who had asked about Bora's well-being. However, because Jinwoo often saw Bora with Soo-hyuk, he informed Joo-won that Bora was dating Soo-hyuk. While Yoo-jung was still talking to Bora, she received a call from her school friend Inju, who invited her to a wedding photo shoot. Inju also extended the invitation to Bora, under the condition that she wouldn't cause any disruptions during the event. Later that evening, Bora headed to the gym and coincidentally ran into Soo-hyuk. She decided to act indifferent towards him, still upset that he hadn't replied to her message. Soo-hyuk playfully teased her about waiting for his response, but Bora denied it and showed him the message from Joo-won. Soo-hyuk advised her to block Joo-won's number, and during their conversation, Bora mentioned the upcoming wedding photo shoot she was invited to. After their workout, Bora and Soo-hyuk headed home together. Bora noticed a pile of trash in the back seat of Soo-hyuk's car and found Yuri's favorite book among it. Later, Soo-hyuk called Bora and offered to accompany her to the photo shoot event, even suggesting they pretend to be a couple to provoke Joo-won, who might also attend. Bora agreed to this intriguing idea. On another day, Bora met with radio staff members So-young and Yoo-rae, who offered her a chance to return to radio broadcasting. Bora said she would consider it. Yoo-rae then gave Bora an invitation to her wedding and noticed the book Bora was reading. Bora mentioned a man who had recommended the book to her, which made Yoo-rae curious. Although Bora only described a few traits of the man, it reminded Yoo-rae of Soo-hyuk. In a separate encounter, Yoo-rae gave Soo-hyuk her wedding invitation, and he pretended to congratulate her with a smile. After Yoo-rae left, Bora saw Soo-hyuk and realized that Yoo-rae was his ex-girlfriend. Seeing Soo-hyuk looking downcast, Bora invited him to have a drink together. The following day, Yoo-rae met Sang-jin and handed him her wedding invitation. When Sang-jin mentioned that Soo-hyuk was working with Bora, Yoo-rae was taken aback and remembered Bora's description of the man who had praised her book. It dawned on Yoo-rae that Soo-hyuk was the same man Bora had talked about earlier. Later, outside the publishing company building, Yoo-rae coincidentally crossed paths with Bora. Bora stopped her and shared her thoughts about Yoo-rae breaking up with Soo-hyuk for a wealthier man, liking into cheating. Yoo-rae became self-aware and admitted her mistake. A few days later, Soo-hyuk waited in front of Bora's house as he was going to accompany her to her school friend's photoshoot event. Inside the car, Bora noticed an engagement ring box in the dashboard storage that Soo-hyuk had intended to give to Yoo-rae in the past. During the journey, Yoo-rae suddenly contacted Soo-hyuk, crying and expressing her longing to see him. Soo-hyuk became torn about what to do and eventually decided to meet Yoo-rae. He asked Bora to get out of the car and explained that he would join her at the party after meeting Yoo-rae. Initially, Bora tried to understand, but then she turned back and attempted to stop Soo-hyuk by taking his car keys. Soo-hyuk chased after her, and Bora asked him not to go see Yoo-rae because he had promised to attend her school friend's wedding party. Soo-hyuk tried to explain but eventually took his car keys, leaving Bora behind. Soo-hyuk then met Yoo-rae at the bar. Yoo-rae confessed that she regretted breaking up with him and still thought about him. Soo-hyuk responded by saying he had let her go, congratulated her on her wedding plans, and they both moved on. Meanwhile, Bora arrived at Inju's wedding photo shoot and was told not to get too drunk. After the photo shoot, Bora heard that Joo-won had arrived. She passed her ex-boyfriend and went to Soo-hyuk, who had just arrived. They held hands and went inside, surprising their friends, especially Joo-won. Bora introduced Soo-hyuk as her friend and colleague. They walked around and Bora was surprised he came. Soo-hyuk said he came because he promised her. Joo-won secretly watched them, feeling jealous. During dinner, everyone wondered about Bora and Soo-hyuk's relationship. Soo-hyuk said he liked Bora and remembered being captivated by her in a black dress at a wedding. He wanted approval from Bora's friends, and they were happy for them. Joo-won stayed silent, watching his ex-girlfriend happy with someone else. When they said goodbye, Soo-hyuk shook hands with Joo-won, who held his hand tightly. Soo-hyuk didn't back down and held Joo-won's hand firmly. Before leaving, Soo-hyuk helped Bora fasten her seatbelt, making Joo-won think they might kiss. On the way home, Bora pretended to look for tissues to check the ring in Soo-hyuk's car. He admitted he hadn't thrown it away because he hadn't finished paying for it. Bora apologized for trying to prevent him from meeting Yuri, and he explained that he and Yuri had decided to go their separate ways. The next day, at a cafe, Yoo-jung remembered how close Bora and Soo-hyuk were at the party and thought Bora might have feelings for him. Bora denied it, but Yoo-jung didn't believe her and suspected they had slept together. Bora then admitted they had only kissed. Another time, Bora and Soo-hyuk worked out together at the gym. Yoo-jung teased them about kissing again, but Bora firmly told her they were just friends. In the evening, Soo-hyuk invited Bora to watch a movie. They got seats in the corner of the cinema, exchanged glances, and almost kissed, which made them both feel embarrassed. Meanwhile, Sang-jin and Yuri met at a cafe to talk about Yuri's feelings. Sang-jin had learned that his employee had a crush on him. He told Yuri that he was a widower and only saw her as a colleague. He mentioned he didn't deserve her feelings, which surprised Yuri, because she hadn't confessed her feelings yet. Switching to a restaurant that Bora and Soo-hyuk visited after watching the movie, Bora complimented Soo-hyuk's looks, making him feel a bit awkward. Bora wondered who would break up with whom if they ever dated, and Soo-hyuk confidently said he might be the one to get dumped. Bora laughed, thinking it was unlikely they would date, but Soo-hyuk disagreed. Bora explained again that Soo-hyuk didn't seem to like her romantically. She also didn't feel attractive, and Soo-hyuk mentioned that someone close to her found her attractive, piquing her curiosity. Soo-hyuk didn't reveal who it was, and Bora reminded herself not to get too carried away with her feelings. After dinner, they both went home, and Soo-hyuk walked her to her house. On the other hand, Jin-ho and Bo-mi appeared to be in Jin-woo's secret room. Bo-mi got a call from Bora, who couldn't find her younger sister. Bo-mi chose not to answer because she thought her sister would ask her to come home right away. Instead, Bo-mi and Jin-ho shared an intimate moment, and he nervously told her he would protect her from himself. Bo-mi encouraged him not to hold back, and they started kissing. The next day, Jin-ho was at a cafe, looking happy after spending the night with Bo-mi. He was surprised when Bora suddenly started talking about how young people today like to sleep together before marriage. Jin-ho got nervous, thinking Bora had found out about his relationship with Bo-mi. Luckily, Yoo-jung arrived and stopped Bora's lecture, considering it old-fashioned. They all chatted, and Bora talked about her date with Soo-hyuk. They were surprised when Bo-mi showed up at the cafe to apply for a job. At first, Jin-woo didn't take it seriously, but he got interested when Bo-mi said she would kick out Bora, who spent a lot of time at the cafe without ordering much. Jin-woo immediately hired Bo-mi without hesitation. On another occasion, Soo-hyuk came to meet Bora to discuss her book. Bo-mi approached as if she were her sister, urging Bora to order another drink since she had been at the cafe for a while. While Bora ordered a drink, Bo-mi greeted Soo-hyuk and asked him to keep her sister company. Sometime later, Yuri's wedding party finally took place. Bora intentionally attended with Soo-hyuk as her pretend boyfriend. They showed affection in front of Yuri's future husband, who simply smiled and welcomed the guests. Before the main event started, Soo-hyuk met Yuri in the bridal room to offer congratulations and complimented her appearance. They seemed to have accepted their own paths to happiness. Later, during the bouquet toss, Bora tried to catch it but was bumped by Soo-jin, who was behind her. After Yuri's wedding, Bora took the bouquet home with Soo-hyuk. On the way, he admitted he didn't want to go home early, and they both felt a bit awkward but laughed together. That night, Bora had finished her work at home when she came across a photo of herself wearing a black dress at her friend's wedding. She was surprised to spot Soo-hyuk standing behind her in the photo while she was taking a selfie. It made her realize that Soo-hyuk had been telling the truth about their first meeting at a wedding where she wore a black dress. Shortly after, Soo-hyuk contacted her, and during the call, she mentioned she remembered their first meeting at her friend's wedding. Bora wondered why he was calling her late at night, and Soo-hyuk, feeling nervous, said he just wanted to let her know she could reach out to him if she needed anything. This made Bora happy, and she daydreamed about marrying him. After the call with Soo-hyuk, Bora got in touch with So-young to let her know she was ready to resume her radio show. On another day, Joo-won saw Bora's social media post announcing her return as a radio host. Bora, at the radio station, felt nervous about her live broadcast since she had been on a long hiatus. She called Soo-hyuk for advice, but he pretended to forget it was her broadcasting day. Still, he offered encouragement. After the call ended, Bora felt annoyed and questioned why Soo-hyuk could forget her important schedule, especially when he had encouraged her to return to the radio show. Just before the radio show was about to start, Bora got a big bouquet of flowers as a surprise, and she thought Soo-hyuk sent them to support her. When the live broadcast began, Bora greeted all the listeners and introduced herself as someone who knows about breakups, not as a love expert. Yoo-jung and others, including Soo-hyuk in his car, tuned in to listen. Bora talked about what she learned and gained after her heartbreak, like rediscovering herself. She didn't mention Soo-hyuk's name but thanked someone who had been there for her during tough times, making Soo-hyuk smile because he knew she meant him. During the Q&A session, So-young picked a question from a listener with a number similar to Ju-won's. When they called that number, Bora was surprised to hear Ju-won's voice. In their conversation, Ju-won admitted he realized he still loved a woman he had broken up with and was on his way to see her. Bora discouraged him, saying he shouldn't meet his ex-girlfriend, but Ju-won insisted he had a chance to win her back. After the radio show ended, Bora met Ju-won in the lobby. She initially ignored him, but he wanted to talk privately, so she couldn't refuse. Soo-hyuk, who had just arrived in the radio station's parking lot with a bouquet of flowers, accidentally saw Bora getting into Ju-won's car, and it made him feel jealous. At a cafe, Ju-won pleaded with Bora to forgive his mistake and give him another chance, but Bora, still hurt by his actions, didn't respond. That night, Soo-hyuk returned home, thinking about Bora, and hesitated to contact her. Meanwhile, Bora, getting ready for bed, waited for Soo-hyuk's call and wondered why he hadn't called her that night. The next day, Soo-hyuk went to Jinwoo's cafe to meet Bora as usual. She asked if he had listened to her radio broadcast, and he admitted he had heard everything, including the call from Ju-won. Bora admitted to meeting Ju-won after the radio show. From a distance, Ju-won appeared at the cafe and greeted Bo-mi, who didn't seem thrilled about her sister's ex-boyfriend being there. Jin-ho, who saw Ju-won, tried to be friendly with Bo-mi and mistakenly thought Ju-won was Bo-mi's ex-boyfriend. He introduced himself as Bo-mi's boyfriend, and Bo-mi explained that Ju-won was Bora's ex-boyfriend. Jin-ho felt embarrassed, and Bo-mi decided to be open about their relationship. Ju-won approached Bora, acting friendly to make Soo-hyuk jealous. Soo-hyuk decided to leave and give Bora and Ju-won some time to talk. In the cafe's parking lot, Ju-won chased after Soo-hyuk and asked if he liked Bora. Soo-hyuk just smiled. Ju-won said he and Bora would be together again soon and asked Soo-hyuk to stay away from her. Soo-hyuk, still silent, quickly grabbed a bouquet of flowers and gave it to Bora, who was trying to explain her conversation with Ju-won. Unfortunately, Soo-hyuk appeared unwilling to hear her explanation and gave her the flowers, saying they were sent by the company as congratulations, even though he had actually bought them for her. That night, Bo-mi and Jin-ho were at a convenience store when they noticed sanitary napkins on the shelf, and Bo-mi realized her period hadn't come yet. She decided to buy a pregnancy test. In Jinwoo's secret room, they nervously waited for the test results. Bo-mi asked Jin-ho if he would take responsibility if she became pregnant, and he quickly said he would marry her and take care of the baby. After waiting for some time, they checked the pregnancy test, and it showed that Bo-mi was pregnant. Jin-ho hugged her with excitement because he was going to be a father. Meanwhile, Yoo-jung had to go back to the closed cafe to get her forgotten phone. She was surprised to find Jin-ho inside. Jinwoo confessed that Jin-ho had been living in his secret room all along. Yoo-jung was increasingly upset because she had no idea her husband had a secret hideout. She asked them to show her the room. When they entered, Yoo-jung scolded her husband for hiding the place and started inspecting it. She found Bo-mi hiding in one of the closets and noticed a pregnancy test on the floor, suspecting that Bo-mi might be pregnant. Yoo-jung called Bora to inform her about Bo-mi's pregnancy. Bo-mi, who didn't want her sister to find out, tried to destroy Jinwoo's game box. Jinwoo intervened to save his game box. After Bo-mi calmed down, Yoo-jung called Bora to tell her about Bo-mi's pregnancy. Boris was shocked and ended the call. Shortly after, Bora arrived at the cafe and took Bo-mi with her. Initially, Jin-ho wanted to follow his girlfriend, but Yoo-jung stopped him to give Bora some time to talk to Bo-mi. The next day, Bora had a meeting at the publishing office with Soo-hyuk. He asked about the progress of her book, which didn't seem to be going well. They were not getting along, and Bora asked for more time to finish her book. Soo-hyuk started criticizing her for still using her old car, implying that she had reunited with Ju-won, even though she hadn't. Annoyed by the accusation, Bora responded by saying she should get hit by an even older car as she got out of her old one. Soo-hyuk then commented that he wasn't an old car, and thought Bora's life was sad for sticking with a car that had caused her accidents. Bora explained that she would be even sadder if she chose someone who couldn't express their feelings. Their argument was overheard by the office employees, including Sang-jin, who didn't realize they had such a complicated relationship. Soo-hyuk left the meeting room irritated and told Sang-jin he didn't want to work on Bora's book because he didn't find it interesting. Similarly, Bora chose to withdraw from the project because she couldn't stand her editor, who didn't understand her. That night, Bora confided in Bome that she didn't approve of her sister's marriage to Jinho and suggested that Bome should raise her baby without a father. Bome got frustrated with her sister for interfering too much in her issues with Jinho. She locked herself in her room and called Jinho to tell him about Bora's behavior. Jinho came to comfort her with her favorite snacks, and Bome was happy to see how caring he was. Meanwhile, Soo-hyuk got very drunk at a pub and fell asleep. Sang-jin left him there, knowing Soo-hyuk would call Bora. In his drunken state, Soo-hyuk did contact Bora and asked her to take him home, but she initially refused. A staff member from the pub called Bora, informing her that Soo-hyuk had passed out, so she rushed to pick him up before the pub closed. Bora arrived at the pub and hailed a taxi to take Soo-hyuk home. During the ride, Soo-hyuk talked and asked Bora not to get back with Ju-won, even requesting a hug. Bora found Soo-hyuk's behavior amusing and hugged him. When they reached Soo-hyuk's apartment, Bora laid him down and realized that he had always picked her up and taken her home, even though it was far. She explored his room and found a greeting card for her and a gift box with a necklace with the initial D, matching her pen name. She suspected Soo-hyuk had meant to give her that necklace as a gift. On another occasion, Bora met Soo-hyuk to discuss their relationship. She admitted she liked him but had to end it, feeling he had given her false hope. Soo-hyuk tried to explain his difficulty in expressing feelings, but Bora thought he lacked the courage to do so. She decided to focus on her book and eventually disappear from his life. Upon returning home, Bora received a call from Ju-won, inviting her to dinner, and she agreed. Meanwhile, Jinho was frustrated because he was having trouble finding a place to live for himself and Bome. Jinwoo encouraged him and suggested they marry on Christmas night. Later, Bora finished her book as promised. She wrote about her experiences after her heartbreak, including a story about a man who gave her false hope. Soo-hyuk, who read her writing, realized she was talking about him. She expressed that she would love him if he confessed his feelings to avoid getting hurt like in her previous relationship. But now, she no longer needed that certainty from him. After reading, Soo-hyuk rushed out of the office. Bora had dinner with Ju-won, ignoring Soo-hyuk's call. Soo-hyuk went to meet Yoo-jung to find out where Bora was. At the restaurant, Ju-won tried to impress Bora with his achievements and proposed with a ring, but she surprisingly rejected him. Then, Ju-won's mistress arrived and scolded him for abandoning her. Bora chose to leave, calmly asking the woman to be angry at Ju-won for inviting her to dinner. Soo-hyuk arrived at the restaurant and asked Bora to leave with him. Outside, Bora got frustrated with Soo-hyuk's questions about his feelings. Soo-hyuk tried to explain that he liked all of Bora's quirks, even the silly ones, and then he kissed her. After that night, they started spending a lot of time together, surprising Bome and Jinho, who had seen them quarrel before. Bora also wore the necklace with the initial D that Soo-hyuk had given her. Bora's book, Honest to Love, was officially released and sold very well, requiring 3 reprints. In the final scenes, they celebrated Christmas at Jinwoo's cafe. Jinho and Bome arrived in wedding attire, as they decided to get married that Christmas night. Everyone looked happy with their partners, especially Bora, who was finally proposed to by Soo-hyuk. Moral lesson from the story is, sometimes you need a bit of chaos, mix-ups, and a hint of jealousy to discover that the one you've been looking for might have been close to you the whole time.